Hi there, and welcome to the next in a series of caricatures that I'm posting on a digital medium called Procreate using my iPad Pro. John Lennon is the subject matter today, and I gotta tell you, just before we get this started, I love John Lennon. I'm actually a huge Beatles fan, so this was a really fun caricature to do. And as I said before, we did this in Procreate using an iPad Pro. Quick note on the Procreate thing, if I could really quick. I'm doing this movie in November of 2019, and this is just prior to a release of an update, a massive, huge upgrade to Procreate 5. So just to reiterate, this is not Procreate 5. Procreate 5 is coming soon. I'm really looking forward to a lot of the new features that it's going to be putting out, but this is something of an older version of it, depending on when you're looking at this video. Having said that, though, the version that I'm working in is a very wonderful program. It's actually the thing that got me into digital art and digital rendering in general. I dabbled around with a couple programs in the past. I had some experience doodling on the tablets that were something that you would use on a tabletop, and you'd have to look at a computer screen to see what you're drawing. I just could never really wrap my head around it, and I really think the iPad in general has really kind of turned the corner on what the potential digital mediums have, and made it more affordable for the hobbyist, and which is really what I consider myself to be. Now, on the caricature, John Lennon was fun to do here because this is a pretty simple one. Now, he looks different depending on what era you draw him in. The mop top era versus the bearded, hair all over the place era versus the way you see him in this particular picture. That's all different versions of John, and depending on what era you draw him in and the context of all the other hair and fashion that he's wearing of the time and the age, you're going to get a very different set of exaggerated features depending on how you choose to caricature him. That's the beauty of caricature. What I chose for here is to go with one that made it really obvious what needed to be exaggerated, because it's his hair that really kind of sold this thing more than anything else. The hair is a bit all over the place, but because of how long it is and because of the volume of it, it really makes his face look very long and skinny. And his nose really kind of sells that too. But it gets in context with everything else, it's almost impossible to ignore, because you have the long nose, very skinny as well. You have the big voluminous hair that really kind of makes that face look skinny by comparison. But the big, huge, round lenses of the sunglasses really just take up the entire upper portion of the face and lead you to this idea that long, skinny jawline is something that just kind of pops out at you. So it was just very easy to pick what to exaggerate in this kind of sense. And that's really what caricature is all about, right? We can say the word exaggeration, but let's define what that really means. Exaggeration in this sense is not random, it's chosen. What I mean by that is that if I chose to exaggerate something that was appropriate to exaggerate, it lends to the resemblance. If I just randomly exaggerate something, it may not lend to the resemblance, it may actually detract from it, and if I do that, then I've failed at my attempt at caricature, and I'm back to the drawing board again. So just kind of a note on what we really mean by exaggeration. Again, not random, it's very intentional, and that intention is to help bring the resemblance to the foreground more. Okay, now the hair. Let's talk about this for a second. This is probably the more challenging aspect of this caricature, because the hair was just all over the place if you're looking at the original photograph I used as a reference. I really struggle with this, and hair can be something of an intimidating piece of any portrait or any drawing of a human being, for that matter, depending on how sloppy it is or how windblown it is or anything like that. And this certainly was some very messy hair that I was dealing with. So what do? You tackle it. You go in there and you try to lay in form, and then what I tried to do was just lay in big blocks of color, try to get a flow of what direction he was heading in, and then use an eraser to go back and take out chunks of it where I felt like I'd overdone it. And that's my general methodology. I'll put in too much, then subtract, put in a little bit more and subtract, and hopefully come out the other end with a little bit of sense of a balance. Obviously, I'm going back and looking at the reference over and over again, but I wasn't trying to be spot on with every single little hair and every little strand of hair in the reference photo, because I would have gone crazy if I was trying to do something like that. I was really trying to go for more of a feel for John Lennon, not a frame-by-frame, pixel-by-pixel representation of a photograph that I was looking at. So having said that, I've got the impression of the hair laid in here, but what really, really I think brings this home is when you see me laying the shadow on that hair, because it's going to help give you a couple different things. Number one, some sense of three-dimensionality. Number two, some sense of shadow. But number three, and I think this is important, you'll see it right now, the mutton chops, the sideburns, you really weren't able to see them all that well when it was all just one shade of brown. But now that I'm laying in that darker brownish shadow tone, some of this is starting to kind of come to the foreground a little bit. And again, it just sells the idea. It sells the idea that we're looking at something that might be coming off the page a little bit, slightly three-dimensional. It's not perfect because there's no soft shadow in here yet, but I really think it's starting to work, and that illusion is starting to kind of come out. And honestly, it's a style, this blocky shadow, that I'm really kind of starting to fall in love with, and I think is going to be very indicative of some of my work in the future. I love these blocky shadows. You're going to be seeing a lot more of them coming soon. Now, moving on to some of the other aspects of the caricature that you may want to kind of discuss. Now, in the past, I have talked a little bit about cool shadows versus warm lights, and this is another example where I've done that. So let me talk a little bit about the method here. When I say cool shadow, what I mean is that I'm laying in a blend, and that blend is a multiply, or blend layer, I guess I should say, a multiply layer. I change it to multiply, and when I change that to multiply, it means that it's bringing color from whatever it is that's underneath of it. So I've got a layer in here that I'm drawing on top of the blue jacket, and it's bringing some of that blue in there. When I'm drawing on top of the hair, it's bringing some of that brown in there and multiplying it into the layer that I'm drawing on. But what the color is that I'm drawing with is a blue-gray. Why blue? Because I'm looking for a cool shadow. And why gray? Well, because I'm looking for a shadow again. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding something of a shadowed value to whatever color I'm drawing on top of. Now, that's a little bit difficult to explain, but again, this is something that if you're ever working in digital media, you'll start dealing with your layers, these blend methods. You see these in Photoshop, you see them in Procreate, called multiply. So you multiply, and you use a blue-gray, paint over top of your colors here, and you'll see that it actually changes, because of the multiplication method of the layer, it changes the shadow to whatever color is appropriate for whatever you're drawing on top of. So even though it may not necessarily look like it, the shadow that I've drawn underneath of his chin is the same blue-gray on the same layer as the shadow that's on the jacket collar, and the same as the shadow that's in the hair. I know that sounds crazy, but that's exactly what it is. It's all the same blue-gray that is all on one same layer, and it's all because it's set to multiply that it looks like it's different shades, when it's really not. It's actually just about adding a value after the fact. Think of it almost like it's working in reverse. There are a lot of classical painters, when they're working, will work only in grays and blacks and whites, just values, and then once all that's laid in, they'll lay color on top of it. I'm working in reverse. I'm laying color and then value after the color. It's a method that may or may not work for you. It's something that's been very, very effective for me. It allows me to do things quickly, allows me to do them, I think, relatively effectively, and I really kind of pull off some really interesting illusions sometimes. Again, your mileage may vary, sometimes varying levels of success. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. This is just a learning method for me, like it is for a lot of people that are starting out at this for the first time. So if you have some suggestions here, or if you want to tell me about some things you liked or you just didn't particularly care for, leave it in the comments. That's what this is all about. I'd like to stress that we're all here to learn, and I'm including myself amongst that. So I have some things here that I really liked and wanted to show you. I have some things here that maybe weren't quite as successful, but if you have some ideas for me, I'm happy to hear them, as long as it's coming from a good place. So please, give me the feedback if you'd like to, or if you have some great ideas of some subject matters you'd like to see me tackle in the future, whether it be caricature, some caricatures of celebrities, for instance, or something like that, or some other things you'd like me to draw. In addition, if you'd like to know a little bit more about some of the technique or some of the methodology, maybe some more discussion about how I apply shadow, feel free to, again, put that in the comment section. I'm here to offer any advice I can offer, and I'm here to take any advice you may have to give. So, comment, subscribe, ring the bell so that way you get notifications. I'll be posting videos at least once a week. As long as I know that there's some interest, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. Come back and see some more videos in the future. In the meantime, take care, and thank you.